All right, we're going to do one more example. I'm recording now with Platformer. We did a little bit of sprites on our breakout game. We put in a picture for the brick. We put in a picture for the invincible brick that doesn't break. We put in a picture for the ball that bounces around. And we did the Space Invaders last time where I did little hand-drawn images and then took a picture and messed with it and put it in there just for fun. Let's do the Platformer now. And I don't want to show every single thing all at once. You can do much more complicated versions, but let's start with just putting in a Mario for our guy, maybe something on the background, etc. So that's the first thing. Actually, I just mentioned background, and whenever you do a sprite, you have to have an image for the thing. You also have to have an image for the background. And that's because of the way that it redraws every frame. It doesn't fill in a color like these guys are. Like whenever the rectangle moves for the platform here, it just draws a black rectangle and then moves the white one and redraws it. But the sprite, at least if you use the built-in draw functions, which we're going to do, it expects the background to be an image, and it fills in the part of that image, which is great because if you have complicated stuff, you can fill in the trees or whatever behind it. But even if you have a solid color, we want to convert that to a image with the solid color. So the way you do that is we'll just say background image equals pygame.surface with the right dimensions. It's not liking that. Maybe it's the lag. Sometimes you get a red underline even though it's fine because it just hasn't reconciled your thing with the Replit servers or whatever. I think that's fine. I might have had a typo. Maybe you have to do this because the pair of x and y is really one thing. It's counted as like one parameter and not two separate ones. And then you go background image.fill, and then you fill it with the color. So now, instead of having the background as just a color, this is an image filled with the color. I know that's the same thing, but you have to call it an image in order to mess with it. So now, whenever we make the background, we have to say that it's this now. Sounds complicated. We're only adding 2 lines. It's not the biggest deal in the world. So I'm going to say screen.blit, which is the thing that stamps the picture on the surface. And then I'm going to replace this with this. So now if I hit run, it'll be exactly the same. And you'll never... What? Oh, I have to tell it where. I have to say it appears at the coordinate 0, 0. Now, it's exactly the same, no difference. You would never know that the code behind the scenes had changed, except now it's prepared for sprites. Now sprites can go on here and move around and do their thing because the image is an image instead of just floating color. Now, let's take some of our objects and make them inherit the sprite class. That does nothing. If I have them inherit the sprite class and then I hit run, they still do the same job as before. I don't have to add all the features, but we're going to add some of the features, and all we have to do is that. So this inherits the sprite, and the platform inherits the sprite. And then the sub-platforms, like this one and this one, we don't have to put that in there because they get their parents, but they also get their grandparents and all the way down the line. So I don't have to specify anything in here or here because it's already, in the family tree. So when I'm going to, let's hit run, make sure, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's fine. The sprite nature doesn't take away anything. It just adds possibility. Looks like it collided weird. Let's make sure that platform still picks it up. Okay. So the sprite attributes and methods can now be taken advantage of. So let's get in on that. I'm going to do the guy first instead of the platforms. So let's have it get going from there. Now we're going to have to run the initialization of the super, and super just means one level up, so the parent, so the sprite class. So when I say super.init, it runs the initialization for the sprite class, which we don't even have to know what's in there. Okay, we just say, hey, do your thing, and it'll do its thing. You can look up the source code, and it's actually not that complicated. It's not that big or anything, but just know that we got to run this in order to get the benefits. Another thing we have to do is, and kind of the only thing we have to do right now, is self.image. Okay, you've got to have an image in order to take advantage. You don't have to have an image for a sprite, but like right now it's a sprite without an image, but you have to have an image in order to take advantage of the features of, like, hey, we're going to draw this, we're going to take it off the background, put it in a new place, use all that stuff that we want to use. We're going to give it an image, and you could do the same thing I did here, where you just make a surface and fill it, like just make a rectangle and fill it with the color, and then go from there. But that wouldn't give us a new result. We already do that in another way. So we want to get a cool result. Let's have an image, which means we need to have a file. Last time I did some cute little hand-drawn stuff. This time let's just steal one. Let's just Google like Mario and then take a picture of Mario. Or what do we want? Our guy is round, like a little circle, so maybe like Kirby. Kirby sprite. When I was a kid, I played the original Kirby on the Game Boy, and that was pretty fun. As long as I mean, maybe it wasn't. Maybe my memory is, inaccurate after 30 years or something. But I remember it being pretty cool. And then I played the Kirby on NES, which is like kind of hard. This one looks all right. Actually, I wonder if okay, so right away I was thinking this would be great, except the white, obviously the white background is not transparent, so it's going to show up as a weird little square around him. But maybe we can get the transparency stuff going, and maybe we can figure that out. Let's save this. If we use another one later, that's fine. Let's make a desktop, new folder, and we'll call it platformer assets, and then we'll call this Kirby, and then we got to figure out what size do we want it to be. Now our guy is radius 20, which means if it was a square it would be 40 on each side, right? Because 20 is the sort of from top to middle or whatever. So we want this to be 40 by 40. I'm going to use Microsoft Paint to just quickly shrink it. You can use whatever. On your Chromebooks, there's a built-in editor, and it's not very good, but you don't need it to be very good. If you do want something nicer, I recommend a thing called Pixlr, Pixlr, where you can just upload a thing or import it from your Google Drive and then have some pretty good editing options from there. Is this a square? It is. 40 by 40. Let's see how that looks. Looks wonderful. Looks like the NES. This probably is from the NES, the sprite that I completely copied without looking into it. Yeah, sure. Okay, so now we're going to upload that to our Replit by doing this. and it appears on the thing. And now I'm going to say plugin.image.load kirby.png. That is going to work. It will give us weird error messages in the console here, just like whenever you run it, you get those weird ones related to audio that we're not even using, but it still works. So now we're going to go self.rect. In order to have a collision and stuff, we're going to want a rectangle, and it plays the same role as our hitbox from earlier. And we can actually use that hitbox function, but the sort of standard thing is to go self.rect equals self.image, .get rect, and then it will draw a rectangle around it, not really worrying about how or anything. It'll do it automatically. Now later, there's a thing called masks, which is like if you want pixel perfect collision, because right now if it hits anywhere in that square, it'll damage Kirby, even if it's like the corner of that square that doesn't actually have Kirby in it. You know, we could do some stuff where you make a what's called a mask, which is like you only have the pixels of Kirby and not the whole rectangle. That's another sort of, you know, more advanced. Hey, look, my camera isn't working. It's still recording the audio, but my camera froze. I'm going to shrink the camera thing, but who knows. Now we got to tell it where to go, because if you have these x and y values just in the class, and then you tell it to draw the image, it doesn't know that those values are connected to the image. It's just stuff in a list of, you know, attributes. So you have to say, hey, this is going to go in the spot. Self.rect.center equals self dot, or I don't even have to say self, because this is in the function where they're getting sent. Plus it's a line before those things exist anyway, so that'll work. And then later we'll say self.x and self.y when we're talking about it. So now we made an image, loaded it, gave it a rectangle, gave it a spot, and if I hit run, still nothing would happen, right? It would still just show the same stuff because we haven't done the draw function yet. If you remember a minute ago, I was talking about blit. There's a function called blit to do images, and the draw function for sprites is like the upgraded version of blit. It's like, hey, we're going to do it, and we're going to keep the background there in case we replace it when we move. We're going to do it all for you and make it nice and easy. And you can still use blit. Like you could say blit for a sprite and then move it yourself and do all this stuff. But the draw function is kind of just better. Unless you want to mess with it, of course, and change things. So let's do that. So we're not going to need these anymore, the show and hide from our thing. And we might delete them eventually, but, you know, whatever. And actually these, top and bottom, we don't need those anymore because the self.rect automatically gets those as part of its built-in attributes. So you can say self.rect.top middle or top left or bottom right or whatever, and it'll know what you mean. So that's cool. And then all of this stuff can still do its job even if we don't actually put the circle on screen like we were used to. So what we have to change is the update. This is still, that part's not, and that part's not, but everything else can still do the job. Okay, we're replacing hide and show because we're going to use the imagey stuff instead of the circle-y stuff. But all these other things are still going to, you know, do their job. So, or maybe the die, we're going to change the die probably, but we'll get to that later. Now, the thing about sprites is that they have to be in groups, even if you just have one. So if we remember in this game, we have all the platforms in a list, and we don't have the guy in a list, but the guy has to be in a group just because all of that cool stuff I was talking about, like being able to use the draw function and other stuff like clear and kill and all these other built-in really time-saving features, those are meant for groups. So let's make wherever we make the guy, let's put him in a group right away, or somewhere near there. Okay, this is dumb, but I'm going to call it guy group equals pygame.sprite.group, and then guy test is the name of our character. So now over here, instead of running the one, I run the group, and I also have to do one that says draw screen and then the background, I think, if I remember right. I'm not looking at notes. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I think I remembered it. Let's see if that works. Oh, something. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. This does not go on the draw. This goes on the clear. There's one called clear, which is like, you know how our thing had show and hide, where it's like you draw it, but then the next frame you have to undo it in order to put it in a new spot. This is the same thing. Instead of show and hide, they call it draw and clear, but it's the same idea. If I remember right, this is how you do it, but I hardly ever remember right, so let's see if that works. Hey, look, we got our Kirby, but it's not moving the way it should, so what's going on with that? Must be something in the update, because that's where all the stuff happens, right? It couldn't be anything else. So let's see what's going on with that. We have to make our image move. So we need one more line. This thing, the self.rect.center, is initially drawing it in the right spot, but we have to redraw or readjust self.rect.something each frame. So we have to do one more line to get it moving. We have to take something like this in probably the function called move, but really any of these functions anywhere would do the job, right? How about this? And now it's going to be, like I said earlier, we can't use x and y anymore. We got to call them self x and self y. How's that going to work? Let's try that. Hey, we got Kirby, and he's doing all the stuff. Isn't that lovely? We can jump. We can bounce off the spring. We can ride on the elevator. We can die if we fall off the edge. Yep, we can respawn if we die. However, we got some issues, right? One is that the background is white and it's looking dumb. You know, we want it to be transparent. So let's see if we can get that going. And we also want him to change. Whenever I move left, he should be turning left, right? Let's see if we can do those things. Last time I tried the transparency thing and it wasn't working. But let's try again. It's a different image anyway. Okay, so with transparency, there are two ways to do it. One is to just upload an image that has transparent parts, like, you know, a PNG is usually good for that, where it would have like all the stuff on the edge is drawn as a checkerboard. I'm sure you've seen that. And then when you put it onto something, that doesn't show. It brings out the previous layer. I tried that on one of these and it wasn't happening. Maybe I messed it up. Who knows? You guys will figure it out after you all try, and one of them will work, and then we'll see what part that person did, etc., etc. Man, it looks dumb with my webcam stuck. I don't know how to fix that, but we'll see. So there's another way, which is this thing I just looked up. You can see I still have the tabs, called set color key, and if you tell it, hey, there's a specific color that I want to be not shown, then theoretically the background will shine through. So let's say whatever dot set color key, and then give it the color. So hopefully, you know, that the stuff on the corner of that Kirby image, I don't know exactly what that is. I hope it's white, like pure white, the same as my foreground color. It might be a little bit off, you know, it might have like a tiny bit of R or G or B in there. But let's just try. Let's just see what happens. If I say set color key, is that going to work? I have no idea. Okay, it actually looks worse. It has like a weird little choppy effect. I don't know if you can see, but I'm looking close, and there's some part of it that looks a little bit wonky. I have heard that I've seen in some of these things that I Googled in the last, 20 minutes before you got here, that you might have to load it in a certain way. That's like, converting it to the right type of thing. And that might have to do with the errors that you're getting on Replit. Sometimes when we run it with an image, we see errors down here. Actually, I'm not getting those right now. But what do these guys do? I don't see that they're getting any of that stuff. Well, anyway, we'll figure that out. Let's do the other side of it. One thing that should be easier, which is let's do the thing where when we move left, Kirby's going to turn left, okay? Because that's like a big part of just making it look, I don't want to say realistic, but you know what I mean. Just look solid, where like he's moving left, he's looking left, he's not static all the time. So let's go to my Kirby file and open it with Paint, and then make another one that's flipped, okay? So I'm going to go rotate, or flip horizontal. So now he's turned the other way, and then I'm going to go save as, and I'm going to call him Kirby left. Hang on, that was saving it in the wrong folder anyway. And see, that thing was mentioning that it had some transparency, or that at least could have. So I don't know. That's a thing that I have zero experience with. We'll figure it out though. Okay, so now we've got a Kirby left, and now we're going to upload that. And now we need to make a thing that when he turns, we change the image, okay? So I don't want to use load every time. I don't want to like load the image and then you hit right and then you load the other one and then you load the other one. I want to load them both and then just switch back and forth between which is which. So I'm going to change a little bit about this guy. Let's say self dot left image equals and then self dot right image equals plain Kirby, and then self dot image equals self dot right image. Now let's hit run to make sure that hasn't ruined anything. Okay, and then let's add a little function that says, hey, when we're going one way we're turning, and when we're going the other way we're not. So let's add a function called, you know, turn, I guess. And we're going to say if, or how could we do it? We're going to move left and right, and we want our guy to turn. We could do it by just checking every frame. Hey, if we're going left, we're going to go left. And if we're looking right, we're going to go right. Or we could do it mixed in with the key press thing. Like if you push the left key, that's when it switches. Maybe that's better. I don't know. Let's take a look real quick at where that key stuff even is. Let's try that, and then it wouldn't even have a new function. Let's see how that might go. That might have a little inefficiency in it, but it should work. Because we don't want it to actually like change the image every frame. We want it to change it only when it has to. But you know what I mean. Okay, let's try that. Ah, look at that. My guy's turning. When I go left, I'm right. Now I go left. Now I go right. Beautiful. Okay, so we got to figure out the transparency thing. But I'll end this video now because we've got multiple things going on. Beautiful. He's turning. He's turning. It works. It works. Okay. So with you guys, now we've seen a couple different examples. You've seen Breakout, Space Invaders, and a platformer using hand-drawn images, Google image, stolen images, some that move, some that don't, some that turn. We got a nice suite of examples that you've seen, and we'll get better at the transparency thing. I'll figure it out, either use images that have it built in or figure out how to do the color key thing, which shouldn't be that hard. I see people do it all the time. I just never messed with it myself. All right.